Hi, my name is Danielle and I'm a librarian for the Elyria Public Library System. I do the true crime book club called Extremely Wicked, and today I have some true crime classics to share with you. The first book I have today is In Cold Blood by Truman Capote. This was published in 1966, and it's considered by many to be the first true crime story or the first true crime novel. It's often called creative nonfiction or narrative nonfiction, which just means although the story is true, the way it's written is high interest and makes it feel very much like a novel. One of the things that I find really interesting about In Cold Blood is that Truman's childhood friend, Harper Lee, the author of To Kill a Mockingbird, helped him research this. She actually traveled with him to Kansas and they spent months researching, and she was invaluable to writing the novel because she was very easy to talk to, and so the locals really opened up to her about what happened. So the basis of this story is the murder of the Clutter family. Two convicted felons find out in jail or in prison about this prosperous farmer who allegedly has a safe filled with cash in his house. So they make plans and they go to rob this house. They find the farmer, Herb Clutter, his wife and his two teenage daughters are all at home. The thieves tie them up and then kill them to keep from being identified. And in truth, he didn't have any cash in his house. The killers got away with less than $50, and they were arrested within 6 weeks. So In Cold Blood is the true story. And the next book that I have today is Helter Skelter. And this was published in 1974, so less than 10 years after In Cold Blood. And this was written by Vincent Bugliosi and Kurt Gentry, and this is about the Manson family murders. Bugliosi was the prosecutor on Charles Manson's case, and the New York Times lists Helter Skelter as the best-selling true crime book in history. I would especially recommend this if you really like reading about trials, because Vincent, as being the prosecutor on this case, he goes into a lot of detail about the Manson family criminal trials. The next book that I have for you today is called The Executioner's Song, and this was published in 1979. The author, Norman Mailer, was already a renowned fiction author when he won a Pulitzer Prize for The Executioner's Song. And this is the story of Gary Gilmore. He has a troubled childhood and a long history of criminal behavior. He serves 13 years in prison for armed robbery. And when he gets out, he moves in with a sympathetic cousin to try to turn his life around. Instead, he gets involved with a much younger woman named Nicole, and they have a very tumultuous relationship, and then he starts using drugs again, and eventually he is involved in 2 robberies. In each of these cases, he shoots the clerk and kills them for no reason. The clerks are cooperating with him. They're not fighting or anything like that. And much like in the Clutter murders, he didn't get away with very much money. It was a very dumb crime. He was caught after shooting himself in the hand while attempting to dispose of his gun. What makes this story really interesting, though, is that Gary Gilmore admits to the killings and fights any attempt to stop his execution. He thinks that the execution is fair and he just wants to get it over with after he admits his guilt. The last book that I have today is probably my personal favorite true crime classic, and that's The Stranger Beside Me, which was written in 1980 or published in 1980 by Anne Rule. And in this story, when the story starts, Anne Rule is a 35-year-old mother with multiple children. Her marriage is falling apart. She's working for these little magazines writing true crime, and she's working part-time at a crisis hotline. Her coworker, she becomes friends with, even though he's a 24-year-old college student. and he's doing this job as part of his work study, and his name is Ted Bundy. Ted Bundy, of course, is an infamous serial killer who was executed years ago. But this is a really interesting story because it starts with Anne meeting him and her impression of Ted, and she remains friends with him as he becomes suspected of the crime, multiple arrests, multiple trials. So she remains in contact with him all this time. So it's a really fascinating look at a serial killer. So I hope you enjoy my recommendations, and if you like talking about true crime and would like to join the True Crime Book Club, it's every third Tuesday at 2 o'clock online. If that time doesn't work for you or that date doesn't work for you, leave a note in the comments of maybe some times of day, days of the week that would work for you, and we'll see what we can do. Thank you so much for joining me today. Goodbye.